is absolutely zero doubt in my mind. Rachel Meghan Markle was a semi-expensive yacht girl, and she knows it.
There are moments in the celebrity royal universe when a single comment doesn't just stir the air, it cracks it open.
That really is just so insane.
And this time, that fracture didn't come from a palace insider, a rogue journalist, or some carefully timed friend of the couple.
Meghan Markle was introduced through Marcus Anderson to Sarah Fergie.
It came from a woman who has survived more scandals than most modern royals combined.
It's frustrating.
Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, Fergie herself, has unexpectedly stepped back into the glare, and the shockwaves from her latest remark have rolled all the way from London to Montecito. It began during what was supposed to be a soft, reflective interview. Fergie was there to promote her newest book, a gentle conversation about resilience, family, and second chances. Everything was calm, cozy, and predictable, until the interviewer casually brought up Meghan Markle's contemporary influence on the monarchy.
Obviously knew that they would end up in LA because that was Meghan's dream. Her dream was to be an A-lister, and she was unable to make it to those A-list parties.
The studio didn't go silent, but the energy shifted in a way everyone present reportedly felt. Fergie paused, lifted her chin, and with a tone equal parts amused and weary, said, "Oh, Meghan. She's certainly not the first young woman drawn to the sparkle of royal life." The interviewer chuckled politely, assuming this was harmless shade, but Fergie wasn't laughing. She leaned back, gave a knowing smile, and dropped a line that would detonate across every gossip feed within hours. "I remember a summer many years ago, one of those glamorous seasons on the water. A lot of hopeful faces, a lot of ambition. You'd be surprised where some of those faces ended up."
Did you take the money? At one stage you had $40,000 cash sitting in front of you. Did you take it?
Absolutely, yes. And it was given to me, and I got it in the car and then returned it straight away.
Once the scandal broke?
As soon as I knew it was a scandal, not once it broke.
She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Within minutes, social media pulled out digital magnifying glasses, fans, critics, sleuths, and anonymous accounts began connecting dots, especially to a set of high society yacht gatherings from the early 2000s infamous for attracting wealthy power brokers, models, social climbers, and actors looking for their big break. It didn't take long for old photos and rumors surrounding Meghan's early Hollywood years to resurface, especially those tying her to elite summer circles in Greece and Monaco. None of it suggested a romantic connection to Prince Andrew, but the implication that Meghan, long before her royal chapter, may have once crossed paths with certain controversial figures was enough to hit a nerve on both sides of the Atlantic, and while nothing Fergie said was direct, the insinuation was loud enough to wake Buckingham Palace from its PR slumber and reportedly send Meghan into crisis mode. Because Fergie hadn't just stirred an old rumor, she'd cracked open a vault Meghan had spent years sealing shut.
She knows where the bodies are buried. You know, remember, she used to scheme with Princess Diana about how they could take down the family back in the 90s.
The whispers about yacht parties, networking summers, and ambitious years before her Duchess transformation. A period Meghan's team has long labeled misogynistic fiction, but one the internet never fully let die. And Fergie knew exactly what she was doing. The woman who has walked through every fire the royal family could ignite had just lit a new one, this time aimed directly at the Duchess of Sussex. The moment Fergie's interview clip hit the internet, it spread with the speed of a match dropped onto dry brush. Comment sections filled with analysis, reaction videos multiplied by the hour, and TikTok detectives began cross-referencing old yacht manifests, grainy party photos, and archived gossip blogs from the early 2000s. Whether the rumors were fair or not didn't matter. What mattered was the narrative. An open wound Meghan had fought for years to close had been torn wide open again. Inside Montecito, the mood reportedly shifted from routine calm to full crisis. Meghan, who had been preparing a string of polished public appearances, was said to be blindsided and furious.
Terms of the lease say that as long as Prince Andrew maintains the upkeep of the property and the repairs and the renovations, then he is within the terms of the lease, and therefore it is very difficult to remove him.
According to a source quoted by multiple outlets, she was pacing the halls of her home, phone in hand, disbelief hardening into anger. This wasn't a tabloid column she could ignore or a Twitter thread she could dismiss. This came from Fergie, a woman who had lived inside the royal machine long before Meghan arrived, a woman who understood exactly how a few carefully chosen words could ripple across the monarchy. Meghan's reaction wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Within hours, her team was mobilized. Late-night conference calls, emergency PR briefs, and frantic attempts to contain a story that was mutating by the minute. Their goal was clear: shut down the resurrected yacht girl narrative before it cemented itself into mainstream coverage once again. But the internet had already decided it had found blood in the water, and each attempt to clarify or deny only generated more noise. Meanwhile, Fergie remained unbothered. She had survived decades of royal scrutiny, tabloid torment, public embarrassments, and financial disasters. A resurfaced rumor wasn't going to make her blink. When paparazzi caught her leaving a London hotel and shouted questions about her comments, she simply smiled and replied, "Every fairy tale has an origin story, doesn't it?" Then she stepped into her car and shut the door, leaving reporters scrambling to decode her remark. That single line reignited the firestorm. It was coy, sharp, and perfectly ambiguous. Exactly the kind of statement that feeds speculation without confirming anything.
Many of you have seen this picture already. You see that there's Meghan with her Cajuna hat.
Royal commentators called it classic Fergie, the kind of soft-spoken grenade she'd perfected over decades. And while she didn't name Meghan outright, everyone understood the implication. Some people don't magically appear in royal circles. They arrive there by climbing. Buckingham Palace, already juggling its own controversies and recovering from months of public criticism, was not amused. Although Fergie hasn't held an official royal role in years, her words still cast shadows. According to insiders, palace staff privately expressed frustration that her remarks had revived rumors the crown had no interest in revisiting, especially at a time when King Charles was focused on projecting unity and stability. For Meghan, the timing couldn't have been worse. Just as she was positioning herself for new ventures, branding deals, philanthropic projects, high-profile partnerships, her past had resurfaced in the most public and damaging way possible. And now, she wasn't just fighting internet speculation, she was battling a duchess who had mastered the art of surviving scandal long before Meghan ever entered the royal stage. By the second day, the narrative had expanded far beyond Fergie's cryptic comments.
Andrew is being stripped of his prince title. But why now? Buckingham Palace said the king has today initiated a formal process, and his younger brother will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He gave up his other titles earlier this month, including the Duke of York, after facing questions about his pride.
It wasn't just a resurfaced rumor anymore. It had evolved into a full-scale cultural moment, with commentators, royal watchers, and Hollywood insiders all weighing in. Old blogs that had been dormant for years suddenly reappeared. Archived paparazzi photos circulated with fresh captions. Long-forgotten party anecdotes were rewritten as if they were breaking news. It didn't matter that much of the evidence was speculative or taken wildly out of context. What mattered was that it fed a story people were eager to revisit. Meghan, according to a source close to her team, felt the walls closing in. She had built her post-royal identity on empowerment, reinvention, and carefully curated transparency. But suddenly, a version of her younger self, messier, less polished, more ambitious, was being dragged back into the spotlight. And this time, she couldn't control the pace. The internet was writing the script, not her. What made it worse was Andrew's name being pulled into the conversation, not because anyone claimed Meghan had any inappropriate involvement with him, but because Fergie's insinuation had unintentionally connected Meghan to one of the most radioactive figures in modern royal history. PR experts across Los Angeles quietly admitted that even a vague association was enough to set alarms blaring. One insider put it bluntly, "No brand wants their client's name floating anywhere near Andrew's, even by accident." That alone would have been enough to trigger panic inside any public figure's team. But something even more damaging was happening behind the scenes. Hollywood was whispering. Former acquaintances, industry veterans, and people who remembered the early 2000s LA social scene were suddenly being asked for comments, private remarks that inevitably found their way onto gossip shows and podcasts. Some described Meghan as ambitious, others claimed she was determined. A few suggested she knew how to navigate a room full of powerful men. None of these comments were scandalous on their own, but when attached to the already reanimated yacht girl narrative, they took on a different tone. And Fergie? She remained the eye of the storm, calm, deliberate, almost mischievous. When asked whether she regretted stirring up old rumors, she offered a line that went viral within minutes. "I've lived a very honest life, darling. If honesty causes trouble, perhaps the trouble was already there." It was classic Fergie, sharp, playful, and strategically vague. Inside Buckingham Palace, the irritation intensified. While the royal family remained publicly silent, insiders reported that senior aides were frustrated that Fergie had inadvertently pulled them back into a conversation the institution desperately wanted to avoid. The king, they said, had been working tirelessly to present a united front. Now the spotlight had swung back toward royal conflict, and Meghan's name was once again entangled in palace politics. Meanwhile, Meghan's team was scrambling to regain control. They monitored trending hashtags, flagged potential threats, and prepared statements that never made it to the public. They knew releasing any official response would only amplify the story. But doing nothing meant allowing Fergie and the internet to shape the narrative unchecked. And that was the moment Meghan reportedly realized something unsettling. This wasn't a tabloid storm she could outrun. This was a collision between two duchesses, one with nothing left to lose, and one with everything on the line. Inside Montecito, the crisis didn't fade, it morphed. Meghan's inner circle reportedly described those days as strategic chaos, a cycle of brainstorming, damage control, and emotional exhaustion. She wasn't just upset at the rumors themselves, she was stunned that Fergie, of all people, had opened the door to them again. Meghan had always believed that whatever tension existed between them was mild, nothing more than the usual royal friction. But now, it felt personal, calculated, almost retaliatory. Harry, too, was said to be furious, though for different reasons. He had spent years trying to shield Meghan from the same machine that had devoured his mother, and yet here they were again, caught in another uncontrollable media storm. Insiders claimed he was pacing the grounds of their estate, venting to friends, repeating the same line, "Why can't they just leave us alone?" But this time, it wasn't the palace or the press directing the blow. It was a member of his own extended family. Meghan, however, was not going to retreat quietly. If there was one lesson her Hollywood years had taught her, it was that silence only works when you control the narrative. Once you lose grip, silence becomes consent, and Meghan refused to let that happen. So she began doing what she does best, constructing her counterstory. Not a denial, not a defensive statement, something bigger, more polished, more targeted. Her team floated multiple options, a soft focus interview, a personal essay, a strategic podcast episode, but none felt strong enough. What Meghan wanted was impact. Reframing. A moment powerful enough to drown out the speculation and remind the world that she was more than someone else's rumor. According to those familiar with the discussions, she started drafting the concept for a filmed conversation, a raw exploration of womanhood, truth, and reinvention. A piece that would subtly but unmistakably address the resurfaced allegations without mentioning them directly. It was classic Meghan, polished sincerity packaged as vulnerability. But while Meghan strategized, Fergie played a different game altogether. She didn't escalate, she didn't clarify, she didn't retreat. Instead, she went on with her public appearances, book signings, a breakfast show, a charity luncheon, dropping little anecdotes that weren't about Meghan, yet somehow aligned perfectly with the narrative brewing around her. Stories about young women who wanted to leapfrog tradition, tales of newcomers who underestimated royal protocol, comments about people who mistook visibility for power. Not once did she mention Meghan by name, yet each remark felt like a puzzle piece that fit into the larger feud. The public noticed, the media amplified it, and suddenly the storyline shifted from Fergie dredges up old rumors to the duchesses are at war. Side-by-side clips filled YouTube thumbnails. Commentators compared Meghan's composed but strained public appearances with Fergie's breezy confidence. People began picking teams. Team Sarah versus Team Meghan. And unfortunately for Meghan, the momentum leaned heavily toward the seasoned scandal survivor who seemed to be enjoying a resurgence in public affection. Behind closed doors, Meghan's team recognized the danger. This wasn't just a PR flare-up, it was a narrative turning point, one that could threaten her brand, her projects, and her carefully constructed image as an unbothered, empowered figure rising above royal dysfunction. And for the first time in months, the former Duchess of Sussex found herself in a position she hated most, reacting instead of leading. The more Meghan pushed forward with her plan to reclaim the narrative, the more the storm around her seemed to grow. Her team worked tirelessly, scheduling controlled public outings, drafting potential scripts for her filmed conversation, and monitoring every corner of social media for new flare-ups. But the truth was undeniable. The situation had escaped her hands. Every polished appearance she made only fueled new commentary. Every strategic silence was read as guilt. Every quiet day on her website or social channels became another talking point for those convinced she was scrambling. And then came the leaks. No one knew exactly where they started. Anonymous royal aides, former Hollywood acquaintances, distant friends of friends. But suddenly, people from Meghan's past were speaking to the press. None of them accused her of anything scandalous. None offered details that could damage her legally or professionally. But what they did offer was context, tone, and implication. A picture of a woman who had always been fiercely ambitious, always networking, always aiming for something bigger. In most circumstances, those qualities would be praised. But in the charged environment created by Fergie's remarks, they became ammunition. Every whisper, every anecdote, every comment, whether supportive or critical, added volume to a narrative Meghan had tried for years to rewrite. And this time, she wasn't just battling tabloids, she was fighting the lingering memory of who people imagined she was before she married into royalty. Meanwhile, Fergie's camp remained astonishingly stable. Those close to her hinted, just vaguely enough to spark interest, that she had even more stories from the early 2000s. Not incriminating ones, but clarifying ones. Accounts of how certain people entered royal orbit, who pursued proximity to power, and how some reputations were polished after the fact. Again, no names. Again, no accusations. Just hints. And hints were all the media needed. The situation grew so chaotic that even people close to Princess Eugenie found themselves pulled into the crossfire. Meghan reportedly reached out, hoping to diffuse tension and clarify misunderstandings. But Eugenie, sources said, felt trapped between her loyalty to her mother and her lingering affection for Meghan. It was a diplomatic nightmare, one that forced the younger princess to retreat from public comment entirely. Inside Montecito, the atmosphere grew tense. Harry felt helpless. Meghan felt cornered. Every day brought another headline, another theory, another viral clip of Fergie smiling knowingly while avoiding direct answers. The narrative had crystallized. 2 duchesses, 2 histories, 2 worlds colliding in the public square, one battle-hardened and media-savvy, the other newer to the game, but with more to lose. And as Meghan's team finally moved into pre-production on her filmed Reclaiming Her Truth project, something sobering became clear. This wasn't just about one rumor or one interview anymore. It was about image, legacy, and the power struggle between 2 women who understood, in their own ways, what it meant to be devoured by the royal machine. Because Fergie had already lived it, and Meghan was still learning that once the royal narrative turns against you, even long after you've left the palace walls, it becomes nearly impossible to turn it back. By the time the cameras were ready to roll for Meghan's next big move, the question wasn't whether she would speak, it was whether anyone would hear her over the noise Fergie had unleashed.